Hello, everyone, and welcome into a live episode, the first Wednesday night live show, I think, in quite a long time. We're talking college football playoff. Prediction season is officially about to end because week 0 is here. That and more on tonight's episode here on The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Well, hello, everyone. Will Manis, Ralph Leary. My name is Bryce Koon. We're live here on a Wednesday night. We appreciate you tuning in, whether it's Facebook, whether it's YouTube, and if you're on Twitter as well, make sure to head over to those because we can't see your comments. We don't know if we're going to want any comments on this show. We're talking college football playoff predictions. Can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. We'll keep it cordial because this is going to be, I don't think we have a chalk one. I don't think anyone's going like preseason top 4 and saying, I think those 4 are going to be the same. But it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about that. Will Manis, Ralph Leary, we appreciate you so much tuning into the show. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, like the page, share the video as well. And you can also head over to YouTube where we are, guys, we're 20 subscribers away from 2,000. So I think people like to see people like to see the Haynes King notifications that happened and kind of what went on. But hey, we're excited to see that as well. We're going to have some comments. We're going to talk about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's start it off right here, right now. Week 0 is here. We're going to start this time with Will Manis is going to kick ourselves off here. Will, we're going to reveal your top 4 right now. Walk us through your top 4 and kind of why you think it shakes out this way. What has to happen in order for this to take place?
So, yeah, you said there wasn't chalk, but 1 and 2 for me is pretty chalk. Georgia, Ohio State. I think they just kind of roll through their schedules, win their conferences. Not a whole lot of drama with those two, even though Ohio State does have some preseason top 10s on their schedule in Penn State and Michigan. Georgia, relatively easy side of the SEC this year, I think, and they roll through and win. Number 3 is the big one for me is Oregon. I think Oregon is going to be the undefeated Pac-12 champion. They play USC in the regular season. I think they beat them. There's no divisions out there, so they may get a rematch with USC. I guess I'm kind of banking that they don't, but I really like Oregon. I think Bo Nix is going to be in New York at the end of the year as a Heisman Trophy finalist. Dan Lanning, I think, has got things really rolling out there. They're going to play defense. You know that. Bo Nix, the second year out there in the Pac-12, I think he's going to really excel. And I think that they have the edge in that conference. Of course, USC is going to be tough. Utah is going to be tough, but I like the Oregon Ducks come out of there. And Florida State, this is the interesting one. I look at Florida State, and I think they are going to be a one-loss ACC champion. The one loss to LSU, and you would think that if LSU beats Florida State, they would be in the top 4 because I think LSU is going to win the West in the SEC, but I think a loss to Georgia and Florida State winning their conference puts them in the number 4 spot.
I like it. Let's talk about it. Now comes the fun part where Ralph and I get to ask you questions on this. Now, hit you with this. So, look, I'm not going to spoil mine here, and I know we've already got some comments. Unfortunately, there, John, it's only 4 teams. It's not 6 teams, which I think you have in the playoff. But it's not a 16 playoff. But I appreciate the enthusiasm. But I think let's talk about it right here. My question, and then Ralph, I'll let you go. Georgia, I'm okay with. I'm cool with in this.
I think we all are, honestly.
We're all cool with Georgia. Like that's not spoiling anything with putting them in the playoff. Your Big Ten representative. I understand that as well. When you get to Oregon, FSU, are you saying those teams go undefeated? Like, are you saying Oregon is an undefeated Pac-12 champion, or
Yes.
Are they tripping up along the way and they just have a better resume?
Oregon's an undefeated Pac-12 champion. Florida State, a one-loss ACC champion with their loss to LSU in week 1.
And Bo Nix, obviously, like you said, I mean, look, if there's a Heisman candidate to be had, Bo Nix had a really good season last year. I would say the only, and this is more of just like the unknown for me, Will, in Oregon, is does the loss of Kenny Dillingham hurt Bo Nix? It hurt him last time when he left Auburn.
Yes.
So is it the same situation? That's my only hesitancy. But like I think I think that Dan Lanning's done a good job up there. They're going to be pulling in recruits. Can they win the Pac-12? 110%. I kind of feel like the Pac-12 could eat itself, kind of like it did last year, where you could have a champion with a 2-loss team. Florida State, I don't have an issue with that. Are you saying Florida State's undefeated? Where are you kind of rolling with the Noles in this?
Florida State loses week 1 to LSU and wins out the rest of their season. Beat Clemson in the SEC championship, ACC championship.
Even with the breaking news of Mason Smith not playing in that game, you're still taking the Noles?
I like LSU's depth. I think, especially at edge, I think they could weather that storm.
Yeah, we need to get someone on to talk about the depth that the LSU Tigers have along the defensive line. Have to find somebody.
If only we had somebody that covered LSU on this.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. Yeah, no, no weird flex. I talked to one of the guys tonight, so it's what.
Oh, gosh.
But it's kind of like when I told Ralph, and this is a sidebar, but it's okay. It's a live show. Ralph says, "Hey, can I tell you something?" I said, "Hey, I'm talking to Paul Skeens. Let me get back to you on that." And he goes, "Well, that's a weird flex."
Yeah, I think that's probably the strongest flex you've ever had on me in my entire life.
I see John down there. I think those are 6 possibilities. I do understand 2 will be left out. I get you. First, makes perfect sense, John. Ralph, any comments, questions, concerns before we get to yours?
I got one, and Will, I'm honestly not. I'm kind of with you on the Oregon thing. I kind of get it because its schedule's kind of easy. You don't really play until October 14th. You go to Washington, but you got a lot of hard road games here. You do have at Washington, at Texas Tech, which is I know it's Texas Tech, but they're just one of those teams that you can't overlook. You also have at Utah, and that one there to me is Utah is a great home atmosphere. They play really well at home, and that one's the one I feel I know USC is hard, and they play at home against USC, so that's possibly a easy win for them. But honestly, at Utah is a lot more tougher than most people think.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I'm with you. Great teams go on the road and win big games. Yeah. Oregon has the makings of a great team. That's why they're in my preseason top 4.
I like it. Preseason top 4. All right. We close the book on Wills once again. Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Florida State. Guys, that was awfully close to the first ever playoff, if I'm not mistaken, or the second playoff. Ohio State, Oregon, Florida State were all in it that year. And I think Alabama was the SEC representative that year. Ohio State winning it in 2015. That was the second year, I believe. Second year of the playoff. All I remember is, and the Tech fans watching will like this one, Jameis Winston falling down with the fumble and Oregon picking it up to run it in. But anyways, let's move on. Ralph, we're going to reveal yours. And don't worry, Ralph, I'll hit the button. Or you will. So. Georgia, Michigan, Texas, Florida State. Now, this is where I think we start to get it kind of interesting.
Well, why not?
Georgia, number 1. But tell us why you picked Michigan in this sense and go for Texas as well.
Well, I think Michigan's got a solid team. I think they were good last year, and they, you got beat by TCU, who was just a fun team to watch last year. TCU's not running it back. Michigan's got a good quarterback. J.J. McCarthy's solid. Blake Corum's back. He'll be healthy. I thought their defense is strong again. Michigan they look good to me. Ohio State, obviously, they are favored, probably win the division and the conference and everything. Not division, the conference. They had the best receiver in the nation, probably the best receiving room in the country. I just don't know about Kyle McCord. I just don't know much about him. It's the same thing with Georgia because Carson Beck, haven't seen him play. He's played in backup time, and he's played against TCU's first team defense in that championship game. They're down 60. I just don't know anything about him. I'm not going to count him out. I'm not counting out Kyle McCord. I just don't know yet. Michigan has a quarterback that we've seen played really well last year. I think Michigan got better in the offseason. I think they're really good. They're going to compete extremely well in their conference, and I like Michigan this year. I think they kind of play at the same not level, but same style as Georgia. I think you and I talked about that the other day, Bryce. They just don't have the same talent Georgia does.
True.
And that's the main reason why. So I know a lot of people will hate me for this one, but having Texas at 3. I know people saying, is Texas back? I don't know. But Texas is going to be a fun team to watch this year. I mean, I think Quinn Edwards is probably one of the more talented quarterbacks we got to see last year. We didn't get to see him play the full Alabama game, which I think would have been a different outcome if he finished that game. And coming week 2, I believe, Texas comes to Alabama, if I'm right.
I think it's 2. I think it's week 2, yeah.
So, sorry. I want to see that outcome differently than it was last year. I want to see a better game. I know Alabama fans were playing. Well, we had 15 penalties. Well, you screwed up 15 times. That happens.
Yeah.
So Texas to me is not back yet, but they're going to be a fun team to watch. I think Sarkisian's done a great job recruiting there. They got 80 Mitchell from Georgia, super fast, talented receiver. He's going to be good for them this year. So, Texas at 3, I like it. I think they run away with the Big 12, honestly. And
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just don't finish it off. FSU at 4. I'm on the same boat as Will. They lose week 1 to LSU. I think LSU's just really talented this year. I keep reading the same comment, Bryce. Don't worry. I think FSU's got a talented team. I love their quarterback. I love what they got going on down there. They're extremely well coached. They gave this coach some time to really get going. You see where he's done so far. Their future is really high. The ceiling's really high for FSU. They could go undefeated. They could win. They could beat LSU week 1 and go undefeated and be higher than a 4 seed, in my opinion. They could be a 2 to 3 seed easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, I'm not against Florida State. I'm not.
You have to be for week 1, though.
No, I don't have to be. I promise you, I don't have to be. I'm actually, and I'll say this: the week 1 matchup. We're going to talk about this next Wednesday night. The week 1 matchup, like it's not a. And look, LSU's in this conversation. I don't think any of us have them in the top 4, but they're a contender to make the playoff. It's not a make or break game, but it's a tone setter for both teams because I think LSU can lose week 1 and still make the playoff. I mean, you win the SEC title, you're in. But Florida State, if they lose it, they still have North Carolina on the schedule. They still have Clemson, and they still have Notre Dame. So those are going to be 3, you feel like, top 20 teams right there that you still have that opportunity. And you're probably going to play, and I know Will and I talked about this the other day, you're probably going to play at least one of those 2 in Clemson or North Carolina in the ACC title game. So you have a chance, and who knows what happens this season with other ranked wins. So it's kind of crazy. Josh Brown tuning in. Mute Ralph, unleash Will. Josh, you already missed Will, but that's okay.
Come on, Josh.
Will, any questions for Ralph? Any questions here when you look at his top 4 right here?
Yeah, Texas. I'm not sold on Texas.
And that's a good.
They're a very talented team, but how they mesh, are they a complete team? I don't think they are. I think they're going to be great on offense. I think they're going to really struggle on defense. I think it's too early for Texas, and it might not ever happen for Texas because they're going to the SEC next year. We get a good appetizer of that with them playing Alabama. It's hard to say make or breaks or in week 2, but with a 14 playoff, I think it's make or break for Texas against Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm honestly just like the only reason I'm with this because I think they run away with the Big 12. Do you take a 1-loss Big 12 champion to a 1-loss to Bama in that situation? That's my one thing with it. They play all.
I would if I was on the committee. I would.
The only reason I have them is their toughest game this year, and I mean I'm saying this because it's at Alabama. You have Oklahoma neutral site. You play everyone else in the Big 12 is just, it's Kansas State and TCU, but you play TCU on the road. I don't think TCU is the same team they were last year. You got Kansas State at home. I feel good with their schedule and how it looks. I think they can I really do. There's a walk through the Big 12. Big 12 is not really known for defense, especially Oklahoma. And like you said, this is really a future that we'll see in the SEC next year. I love watching that week 2 match. I think I'm actually excited for it because I hope it's a really good game. I don't want it to be a blowout.
Well, good for Texas. They don't have to play the UCF Knights.
Right, it's very true.
They don't have to. They don't have
Gus
to see
Malzahn's would be terrifying.
Gus Malzahn. Good for Steve Sarkisian. Good for Texas. If they're going to do it, it's going to be this year, just because they miss Gus Malzahn.
I think in the new Big 12, UCF has the top recruiting class in for 2024. I think they're leading the way. So. I'm not going to say anything about Texas, Ralph, and that's because while you guys were talking, I went and changed mine. I got my college football playoff right here. I'm going Georgia, Michigan, USC, Texas. Folks, I am covering every single sphere of the country that you could have, except for the Northeast, but, they don't really play football up there. So
don't forget the national champions, UConn, the 2020 national champions.
2020 national champions. Yeah, that is true. Will missed that completely.
Then through the New York Times.
The New York Times made an article. They said, yeah, it's interesting.
They opted out of the COVID year. They're the national champions. That's why.
Yeah, so they were the champions. Okay. Yeah, let's just we'll stop that there.
Moving on.
Moving on. Georgia number 1. I want to talk about this. I think that and it kind of parlays into my number 2. I think Georgia is in a better situation at the quarterback position than Ohio State is. For the sense of you have a guy that has learned and has, like, we don't know if Carson Beck's going to come out in there and be a Heisman candidate. Like I saw, and I don't think he has to. No. You know, the idea that Georgia is going to really struggle under Mike Bobo. One, you know, if you were a Georgia fan when Mike Bobo was around the first time, he never had a defense that was this
triggered
good.
Me.
I'm sorry.
Flashbacks.
I
got bad flashbacks.
I'm sorry.
Like vague memories of a fade to a 5'10" receiver on fourth and goal.
It's
down by
okay.
3.
It's okay.
With Tank Bigsby in the backfield. Sorry.
You're hijacking the broadcast here.
Sorry.
No. So I think Georgia is in the sense like, look, they're in the driver's seat. We know what their regular season schedule is. I think when I look at that schedule, Ole Miss is going to provide a little bit of a test to the defense. I think, offensively, the weapons that they have. You have to go on the road to Tennessee. We've talked about this, a similar atmosphere of what Alabama saw last year in Knoxville is probably going to be happening there. You don't know what Tennessee is going to be playing for at that juncture of the season. I like how someone just commented, which one is Ralph? That's just
Hold on.
Jonesy. Ralph's the one with the Troy side. It's
I'll
okay.
fix this. There you go.
There we go. Now let me have my thing back.
You're good. I'm right back.
I think Georgia wins the SEC this year. Look, I know a lot of Tech fans are going to tune into this, and that's great. We want you to be a part of the show. We're going to talk a bunch of ACC stuff as well, starting next one. But I think that one of the biggest things with this is us understanding that, like, Georgia is still super talented. I know that the Eagles have half the defensive roster, but guys, like, if you don't know that the only reason that you think that Georgia doesn't have this talent is because, one, you're probably not a Georgia fan and you haven't just seen the recruiting classes. Kirby Smart is at a point where he's stacking recruiting classes, he's stacking talent, and like they are right now the class of college football. Like, I know that we talk about Alabama in that way, but like when you win back-to-back titles, I don't care who it is against. Like, it's hard to win a championship. To do it 2 times in a row is, nearly impossible. 3 times in a row, only been done once in the 1930s by the Minnesota Golden Gophers. There's a trivia question for you. Doesn't count. Mickey Mouse championship. So that's where I sit with this. I think that Georgia's super talented. Now I get into Michigan, and so Will, I know you had Ohio State. We all have a Big Ten representative. None of us had Penn State, which I think Penn State's another kind of in that category as LSU. Like, things are going to have to bounce the right way for them, for them to be able to get in there. But look, I'm excited to watch Drew Allar. I don't want to get into it because we're going to have one segment after this going into it. But the Big Ten, I got this right here that I was writing down, and I think that this is really important when we look at Michigan. Ralph, you mentioned Blake Corum. They've also got Donovan Edwards, a really talented back, a 2-headed monster there in the backfield. They have, an offensive line led by guard Zach Zinter, Drake Nugent, veteran players along the line that still remember what it was like to be pushed around in that Orange Bowl semifinal 2 years ago against Georgia. They got a great defense. This is Georgia light. I tell this to Tech fans all the time. You can't measure yourself against Georgia right now. The talent that they have on their 2 deep and beyond is just ridiculous. So I think that when you measure yourself, like, Michigan is one of the best teams in the country, and if Georgia's not there, they might have been like preseason 1 or 2. It all depends on J.J. McCarthy for me. Will, I know that you kind of talked about Ohio State in the sense, but if McCarthy takes the next step, to me that unlocks it. Now, obviously, a lot of this comes down to, can Michigan beat Ohio State for a 3rd straight year? Look, you thought the heads or people wanting Ryan Day's head to roll was bad last year. If they lose again, look, Ryan Day inherited a great situation. It could be ugly again. But I will say this: Michigan gets them in their own backyard. That is going to be that's going to be huge. Really going to be huge to kind of see what this team does. So there's Michigan, my number 2 slot. USC. So this is one for me. Obviously, everyone knows Caleb Williams. Well, I took a page out of your book here going to the Pac-12. I think Oregon's a good football team. I think Utah's a good football team. I'm excited to see what UCLA can actually be. Dante Moore, I don't even know if he's going to be the starter, the former 5-star recruit. But, I think that Gosh, I can see, Ralph, I can't read the comments and you can't react to them. This is a problem.
I'm just taking them off. Just gonna move over.
just move it over. But
Yeah.
USC is returning an offense that is going to be really, really good. Now, defensively, do I think that they're going to have a top 10, top 15 unit in the country? Not really. They've got some pieces, but they don't have as a unit to get kind of what it takes. But the thing for me, Will, in the sense is, if they can go up to Eugene and beat USC or beat Oregon, they're in the driver's seat. So that matchup is going to determine a lot kind of in that Pac-12 race if they don't stumble again. I think so altogether, when you look at USC, is there a path for them to get there? I've got them in that number 3 slot. And then Texas. Ralph, you mentioned there's a lot of folks that every single year, this is what I'll say about Texas. Every single year, the joke is on Texas that they're back. Mm-hmm. The one key component that this team has been missing, and, I get it for you guys, so I'm doing it for me. The one key component that this team has been missing is the fact that interior linemen have not been up to standard of what it needs to be. And now they're starting to get to a point where they've recruited well there. They've really brought in some guys that can play that big boy football that they've always been measuring themselves up to. I like where Texas is on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I think that they've developed talent there. Now that's the calling card is, well, they always say that, but it's never really been true. And I think this year we're starting to see some real kind of manifestation. If you kind of look at some of the notes coming out of fall camp, like there's some dudes in that front 7, defensively, and then on the front 5 offensively that can move for you folks and, can really be nice. You mentioned A.D. Mitchell, but I mean, this Texas offense has the chance to be super good. I know they lost Bijan Robinson and then the other running back as well. But guys, they got a freshman tailback in this year, 5-star, that is going to be a day one type of guy. Like they think he can that. They reminds him of a Bijan Robinson if he can live up to the billing. Then we talked about, they get Isaiah Nair. They have A.D. Mitchell. We can't forget about Xavier Worthy, another guy that is just electric. I mean, Texas has the pieces. And then here's the piece for me. Folks saying, well, can they get there? The Big 12 is not as strong as it was last year in the sense I think that you had really good quarterback play from teams that probably played above themselves. TCU, for example. Kansas State, solidly coached football team. But when you look at that schedule, and I've got the schedule pulled up here right here next to me, outside of the Alabama game, I do not believe that there is a team, and you guys can correct me on this, there's not a team on that schedule that has an over-under win total above 8.5. I do not believe so. So when I take this, if Texas can navigate their way through Bryant-Denny Stadium, I don't think Alabama's going to feel really, really good about their quarterback by then. You get them earlier in the year. That's a good thing. If they can go into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama, and this is not as a far-fetched thing as we think it is. Yes, I know Nick Saban's a great coach. Yes, I understand what Alabama is, but they've got some real things they have to figure out. If they can go into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama, you're setting yourself up. Yeah, you have the Oklahoma game. I still think that Brent Venables is a year or two away from getting that roster back to where it needs to be. Kansas State, you get them at home. You go on the road to TCU. Texas Tech could be an interesting one. I mean, depending on what happens across the country now, and that's where it kind of gets kind of muddy here. I think that Texas, to me, that's my 4th team. I like what they have. I like the way Sark can draw up an offense, and I think he's finally in a spot where the weapons that he has, and I haven't even mentioned Quinn Ewers yet, but the weapons that he has, if Ewers takes that next step that people think he can, this is another guy that could be in New York. Like if Texas is in the playoff, there's a good chance that Quinn Ewers is headed to New York. Just like Will said, if Oregon's in the playoff, there's a good chance that Bo Nix is there. Like it's just kind of how this award works. So very, very in tune. We love to see it. We like to see it. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, final segment of the show tonight, we're going to talk about an exciting team that maybe we all kind of like. We're each going to pick one that necessarily isn't in a playoff position entering 2023.
Cook's Place began serving our signature hot dogs in 1985 from a cart on Broadway. We still serve the best hot dogs and scrambled dogs in town at the corner of Moon and Miller Road and at the landings. Our friendly staff won't let you leave hungry. Come in and eat to the beat with our 50s jukebox. Cook's Place. Fast service, great people, awesome food. What are you waiting for?
Back here on the Crowded Booth, appreciate you tuning in. If you're listening or watching this, whether it's podcast after the fact, whether it's radio over at WQEE, we saw they were watching as well. Appreciate that. YouTube, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. Facebook, make sure to like the page. Guys, we kind of entered the final segment here. We've given our playoff predictions. One of the biggest things I've hated about the way that college football has gone, though, is you have this thought process that if my team doesn't make the playoff, it's a failure of a season. And that's just not true. There's different teams that are at different levels. Not all 132, 31 FBS programs can make the playoff. Ralph, I know, like we joke about, we talk about it, Troy had a great season last year in their own right. You see, we always talked about, Auburn, what would it look like for Auburn to have a good season? No one's really thinking playoff for them. So I want to start with Ralph this time. Ralph, who's a team that maybe just outside of the playoff conversation, maybe outside of, kind of those dark horses that you're just excited to watch them play football this year, and kind of could be a cool story?
Well, it's not one we don't talk about a lot. I think we haven't talked about them lately because they just kind of had a bad situation at quarterback. I'm going to go Clemson. I think K. Klubnik is the guy for them. I think he's very talented. I think he can run that offense better than DJ Ugalele, whatever you want to call his last.
Ui Angalele.
You got it for me. Appreciate it. I think
I just remember that because that name was mentioned a lot last year when they beat Georgia Tech 41-10 inside the Benz.
Oh boy,
Continue.
Let's not rile them up tonight.
That's tomorrow night.
Back to it. Sorry. I think K Club is really good. Will Shipley. I think Will Shipley is one of the best running backs in the ACC. He's so talented. People overestimate or underestimate how good he really is. Watch him back from last year. He played an incredible season. Clemson's always got a solid defense. They're coached very well. I like Dabo Swinney. A lot of people don't like him. I know he can be kind of, they use him as memes a lot. He's kind of like he says some weird things at weird times, but I like Dabo. I think he's a good coach. I think they got a good program there. Klubnik is just he didn't get really much chance last year to play, with DJ at quarterback, and then toward the end of the season was finally put in the games, and you got to see some glimpses of what he can do. But they're also running the offense of what DJU could do, not what K. Klubnik can do. Klubnik's a lot faster. He can use his feet a lot better than DJ could. Clemson's got a different look this year. I think they'll be fun to watch. I'm not saying they're going to be undefeated. They may lose one, but they also could just surprise some teams if they overlook them this year.
Yeah, that's honestly, and I'll say this too, Garrett Riley. What is the Garrett Riley effect in Clemson, South Carolina this year? I've talked about that, and we'll be talking about it tomorrow night on a season prediction show for Georgia Tech. I mean, I think Garrett Riley, the marriage between Riley and Klubnik is going to unlock some things. The one key thing that surrounds Clemson as a consistent kind of mantra year in and year out is how much longer can the refusal of using the transfer portal keep your roster, like the refusal to keep kind of with the times, I guess we could say. Like, how much longer can you utilize that? So Ralph goes with Clemson. Will, who are you rolling with? If you take mine, it's okay. I've got a couple in the chamber I can go with. I can fire off the hip. So who are you rolling with? What's an exciting team that maybe is not in the playoff conversation entering 2023?
No, I'm not going to go Auburn. I almost did it though because
I really wish you would have.
Because honestly, I don't really know anything about anybody else. But I'm going to stay in the SEC West and go Mississippi State. Year one under Zach Arnett after, everybody knows that situation with Mike Leach tragically passing away. But Mississippi State's very exciting. Zach Arnett's an exciting young head coach. But Will Rogers coming back, who's, I think, statistically one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the SEC. It helps playing in an air raid offense. But Will Rogers back, he's going to lead that offense. I'm interested to see what their offense looks like. It's not going to be a true air raid like Mike Leach, but it's going to kind of have air raid elements because that's what they've been running. And they're going to play a fast, physical defense. They've done that with Zach Arnett the whole time he's been the defensive coordinator. Expectations are really low in Starkville, and I think Mississippi State is going to hit their over on their win total. I think they're going to turn some heads.
Mississippi State. I actually wrote an article about that today, kind of previewing that matchup for LSU. Will, and look, They've got Jaquavius Marks, a running back that's super, super talented.
Yep.
Will Rogers is going to break some school records and potentially some SEC records this year. They bring in Kevin Barbay, used to be the OC at App State, to be the offensive coordinator. He's got a more balanced system. But look, they've done a good job. Arnett's already got 2 4-star receivers that are inside the state of Mississippi committed for next year. When I was at SEC Media Days, you kind of just, everyone wanted to be in the room when he spoke. And man, you mentioned it. What's happened with that program, the transition. I think that defensively they're going to be super good this year. They've got a lot of veteran talent, and they be good offensively. It'll be very interesting to watch. Quick shout out to Ralph's dad, who was watching. He shot a text over to Ralph, and he said, "Is Bryce growing a mustache?" There's a faint one going, because I don't know if people have realized, even though I'm now living in Louisiana, still a Falcons fan. Arthur Smith and the Falcons have done this thing where they're going with the mustache. Well, I know that your girlfriend says she can't stand it. I'm going to have to shave it tomorrow because it's just awful. But starting to grow it to support the Falcons as they get ready for their 2023 season. That's all that is. But hey, appreciate it. It's a ton of fun. I'm going to go with my team, and we'll wrap it up here. I mentioned them earlier. It's a team that I'm excited to watch. I think that they are on the outside looking in of the playoff dark horse conversation. But, man, I think they're right there on the fringe. And it's Penn State. Penn State, for me, they have a ton of weapons coming back. They have a quarterback that they left last season, and it felt like that he had been there forever. And for Auburn fans, he stayed 1 year too long. But I'll say this, Drew Aller, I think it's Drew Aller, messed up there. It's Drew Aller. This kid's got some serious talent. If he can find consistency and if he can do some different things, I mean, he's got a great running back behind him in Nicholas Singleton. They've got a good offensive line. They've got some really good defensive players. They kind of have another 2-headed running back room that, we talk about Michigan, but we're not really talking about Penn State. It's Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen. It's all up to Drew Aller. And so I think that, I'm not saying they have to reach the playoff, but we've all talked about this. There's a chance, like if the Big Ten wants to really mess up, you could have a 3-way tie in that division with Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, because they all could beat each other. We all know going into Penn State, it's one of the top atmospheres in college football in the country. It all depends on that quarterback position. So I'm just excited to watch them. Like, just flip on the TV and say, what does this team look like? They could go 7-5. They could also probably go, 10-2. So, it is what it is. We'll see. We'll see about that. But, hey, that is our teams to watch. We got our teams to watch. We have our teams we think make the college football playoff. One more time, Ralph, let's run through those again, and we can just go in order. Bryce, Ralph, and Will. UGA, Michigan, USC, Texas for me. For Ralph, it's Georgia, Michigan, Texas, Florida State, and then Will, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and FSU. Final thoughts here, guys. Week 0 coming up. Are you going to watch any of the games? Will, I know you're working this weekend. Are you going to be checking any scores? Is there a game worth your time this weekend, I should say?
Yeah, all of them. It's college football.
I like it. Ralph, how about you?
Well, man, I'm just glad that football's back. It's the best time of the year, the fall. Waking up Saturday mornings, watching College Game Day, even though I don't get to watch it this year because I have to work on Saturday mornings. Will, you're with me there.
Welcome to my world.
Yep, it's the worst.
I got to work on Saturdays too.
Stop. No, it's football's back, man, and I'm excited for this season because it's the last year we get to see these conferences. The Pac-12's gone after this year. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
So, it's exciting time. I'm looking forward to listening to the games on my phone when I'm working because that's how I do it, and getting updates from my dad all day. So,
all right. I have something I want to say about this weekend. Notre Dame Navy. I saw a comment about it. It's going to be very, very interesting to watch this game. The spread on this game is 20.5, I believe.
Yep.
Take Navy to cover. You know why? Here's my 2 things. Notre Dame did not cover this spread when favored by 20.5 points or more last season. They had 3 opportunities to do that. Navy is also 7-0 when the spread is more than 20 points in covering that over their last 10 or 7 games. I'm not saying I have 0 experience in this realm. I'm just saying I saw it. I thought it was very interesting as well to kind of keep it rolling with there. Will,
Navy plays the game of football the way it's meant to be played on offense.
The triple option is the only way to get
And it's also the United States Naval Academy. So if you bet on Notre Dame, you're un-American.
Or you're Catholic. All right, that's all the time we have for here tonight. Hey, appreciate you so much for watching. Ralph Leary, Will Manis. If you are watching this on YouTube after the fact or you're watching it live, make sure to subscribe to the channel. 20 subscribers away from 2,000. Programming note, we're going to be live doing a college football show every single Monday and Wednesday night, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, around 30, 40 minutes or so, talking college football, talking about the games, previewing some of the games. For Tech fans that are watching this, Sunday and Thursday nights, same time frame, we're going to be talking about Georgia Tech. It's 4 live shows every single week on this channel. We're going to be doing some more content as well. Going to be a lot of fun.
A live stream on Tuesday nights?
Live stream on Tuesday nights. We just got to make sure that Will has the bandwidth to be able to carry that. But that's we'll be doing some type of live stream on Tuesday nights. But hey, we appreciate it. Make sure to like the video. We'll catch you next time here on this episode of The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.